Good evening. I'd like to call this rescheduled regular board meeting of September 28th to order. I would like all of you to join in to pledge allegiance of the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, would you do roll call, please?
Andrea Voorhees.
Present.
Mike Powell.
Here.
Scott Ruggles.
Here.
Liz Smith.
Present.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Lilly is here. Mr. Kowal.
Here.
All of our members are present.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you here. Thank you very much. And obviously, this is a much more comfortable venue. We've got a little more breathing room here. I'd like to read something to you and have a little statement. Welcome. I know many of you tonight are here because you want to know what's happening with the voter-approved library bond proposition. We are working through the necessary steps to continue moving forward. Today at 2:30, I stand corrected, the Township and library representatives met with bond counsel. The Township could not have moved forward any sooner without this meeting because it did not have the necessary paperwork at the time from the library until September 14th to process. Upon that paperwork being submitted to the Township, it was immediately forwarded to the bond attorney, and upon their reply, an appointment was promptly made and a meeting was promptly set up. Excuse me. This process will take time and appreciate your patience and understanding with the process. We'd like to move forward with tonight's planned agenda for the Board of Trustees meeting. Your comments are welcome, and we'd like to hear what you have to say. We've put clipboards out so we can gather a list for all those who would like to speak. Andrea, could you please bring those forward? Depending, right, yeah. Well, we'll leave one there in case anybody else comes in. Depending on the length of time that we spend, we may break it into two segments, one before the meeting and one after the meeting. We'll randomly select individuals that would like to speak. Thank you. At this time, I believe Mr. Powell. Oh, yes, we need to do that. Yes, don't we? Okay. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to have the agenda approved as noted.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Have a motion?
Support.
Motion, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Can't hear you. The microphone.
I'm sorry. Okay.
What would you hold? That's to approve the
That was to approve the agenda, sir.
You're not very in order.
Okay, sorry. Okay, now that we've approved the agenda, we will move on to public comment. Camille Oley of Sunny Beach, would you like to speak, please? Did I say that right?
I am one of the voters that voted for the library, and I voted based on the ballot up to $8.5 million to be spent, and I've been trying to attend the meetings to find out what's going on, and I was a little bit upset yesterday when I was at the library board meeting because they were talking about being over budget. And my background, I was a financial analyst at Beaumont Hospital, and typically you do a feasibility study to find out what things are going to cost. So you have an idea of what all your expenses will be for at least 5 years. It didn't seem like that had been done. I wanted a new library. I didn't think that we needed anything that had a park-like setting because we have many parks here. And I also didn't think we needed some place with a fireplace and coffee, and they talked about a kitchen. The board did talk about ways to cut the plan, the current plan, so that they would be within budget. Had I known what it was going to look like and what the plans were for things that were going into it, that to me aren't necessarily part of a library, I probably would not have voted for it. And I would hope that the Township Board considers or continues to be fiscally responsible to the people of White Lake, and that the Library Board is as well.
Patty Leonard.
I came here to support the library. The bond was passed on good faith that they would issue the bonds. It was a certified election result, and it should be honored as it was intended, a freestanding library. Yes, we do need a new civic center, you know, but the library needs to come first. The rest will follow. I demand that the election, that they issue the bonds. It's way overdue.
Patricia Fooney? I beg your pardon.
I just have a quick comment, and that is I'm wondering why I have not heard up to this time, except I talked with Terry at one point, why, I should have thought how to say this, before the bond issue was approved to be put on the ballot, why not did the, boy, I should have thought of this.
Take your time.
Yeah. Why did the Board of Trustees not suggest this and wait until well after the architects and everybody else had been hired?
Good
That's
question. Thomas Johnson.
Okay, regardless of how I voted, or anybody else, I'm not going to ask them for any personal information. It is a secret ballot. That's one of the reasons why I got this hat on. I fought for that reason. With this, I have heard many different things come to light. Things that were misstated that was on the ballot. The idea of things. One was just misstated here a little while ago because on the ballot proposal, it never said freestanding ballot or library. I do have copies of that proposal as it was put on the ballot. And it was approved for an 86 million maximum for bond. The other thing people have talked to me about says, well, we voted for 30,000 square foot library. I didn't recall that being on the ballot. I had to go ahead and go to the clerk's office to get a copy of what was on that ballot to find out nothing was said about square footage of a library. It said construction, furnishings, and equipment. There was nothing else said. Also, no direct place for where the library was going to be at that time. This all came to light after the election. It was a very close election. In some cases, it became very heated. I would like to see a new library, yes. But I'd like to see it done in a way that the township can utilize it and the people can utilize it. If you go real big, it may have a lot of empty spaces. I utilize a library in Troy because right in the middle of a business district, and I have many meetings that involve business. We don't have that up here, so with this, the township has been working, trying to figure out a size that would meet not only today's conditions, but also tomorrow's. And I got to give them credit for that. So with that in mind, I don't believe we have to go out and outdo the Joneses and try to get the bigger and better library just because somebody else has one. We need to go ahead and come up with a solid plan. The township board, the library board, and the citizens of this city can go ahead and agree on, and something that'll work for years in the future and not just be a white elephant with a lot of vacant space and we're paying utilities on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have Roger Harrington.
I had been prepared tonight to make a very angry statement in support of an independent library. But with what I heard here tonight, it sounds as though possibly the library and the board are going to get together and issue the bond for the erection of a library on the library site. So I'm one of the hopeful residents of this township that the library board and the township board resolve the library issue so that the library can be built on its site. I've always thought that a campus site to be occupied by new buildings for police, fire, and other township activities would be the best future for a growing township. If the matter of the library site can be resolved, there are many of us that would totally support a future campus of new buildings to serve White Lake. Thank you.
Thank you. C.J. Bratta. Did I say that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Good evening. I just wanted to come up here and say, obviously the township has grown a lot since I've been here, and we're at a point now where we're at capacity both at the library and at the town hall, and I don't see why we all can't come together and work together to save the township taxpayers money and utilize potentially a combined building. We haven't even got that far in the study yet, so why we're up here, you know, complaining to the township board at this time, it's beyond me, because we haven't fully divulged what we're going to do yet and decided. But I think it's a good, you know, to get everyone's voice out there. But, you know, like Mr. Powell said before, we need a detailed cost estimate from the library to see if they can support their 30,000 square foot building, and we haven't seen that yet. I'm concerned. We already have 3 millages on the library. Can we afford to go back to the voters for more money for them if they can't afford to operate it, if they can't afford to operate their current building? And I think that we need to continue looking into this and voice our opinion. And I just don't think it's right to come up to the township when they've done everything that they can do, waiting for the library to get the bond and their paperwork. We're already starting that, and I just think—
One meeting, please. One meeting.
And I think that, you know, we just need to continue to work together and work it all out, because, you know, with all the political divide in our country, we really don't need this in our township. You know, with Donald Trump as our president, we see it on TV all the time, and we just don't need to be involved with this in the township. We need to work together for the better of the community, for people like me, for people who are younger generation who are going to live here for the rest of their life. We just need to think about the taxpayers, and I think I applaud what the board's doing for being fiscally responsible, and I expect the library to be held to the same standard. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Long, way in the back.
Mr. Colwell, rest of the officials of White Lake Township, thanks for taking the time to listen. While I'm encouraged by Mr. Colwell's opening statement, I'm here to encourage our township board to continue moving forward with the approving the sale bonds for a new township library. I understand at the budget meeting there was a concern that the library had not completed their due diligence to move forward with the bond sales. As someone who's been involved in construction projects for over 30 years, I believe that any studies, planning, or other pre-construction expenditures need to be done with bond dollars and not from the library's general funds. As a school board president, I am well aware that general fund dollars are for day-to-day operations, and these bond dollars were proposed and approved exclusively for the construction of and associated costs related to the construction of a new library. It would be fiscally irresponsible of the library board to use their general fund monies to do any construction-related spending when they have voter-approved bonds waiting to be sold, just as it would be for any other local unit of government. It would also be a dereliction of duty to use those funds for any purpose other than construction of a new library, as some have implied. This library will benefit our community, our schools, and our image. This is not to say I'm not in favor of a new Township Civic Center that is being explored as part of a larger all-encompassing project. I am. But it is my belief that the Civic Center is a separate issue that needs to be proposed and approved with the support of the community, just as the library has been. This is why I'm asking you to move forward.
Let him finish. Let him finish.
This is why I'm asking you to move forward, to continue to move forward with the approval of the bond sales, and to continue exploring a new Civic Center. White Lake Township needs and deserves both. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Fooney, did I say that right again? Or is it correct? Okay, well, Jim.
I don't know if my hearing aids weren't working right or what, but did you say in your opening statement that the bonds were already started in process?
The bond process is underway. There's been certain requirements that the library brought some information
That's not
forward.
what I'm asking.
And it's going
Just,
forward.
is it started?
Yeah, that would be the answer, yes.
Nothing to hold it up?
The process itself.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Bob Lessa? No? Okay. Thank you. Decline. Tom Gardner?
Thank you for taking time to hear us. My wife and I are both retired, and so therefore, as probably an awful lot of people here know, retirement means a fixed income. We chose to raise our property taxes in support of a new library. And that's why we voted to increase our property taxes to pay for that. If we are going to also get a new Township Center or Civic Center, let's put that on the ballot so we can all vote on that too. And that is basically what I have to say. Thank you.
Glenn Rosso.
So yes, it is my understanding that today's meeting was productive and good. So I think that's great and a good step forward. However, as I've been told numerous times over the past couple months that I didn't do my job, I'm inept, I'm stupid, because I didn't know the process. Just because the voters voted, I should have known that because you get the most votes doesn't mean that you actually get what the proposal is. So I'd like to take tonight during your discussion period to learn from my mistakes. And if you could please, during your discussion, have an open, transparent discussion regarding what milestones in the process that we can judge, the responsible parties, because when you say the library just gave the information on September 13th.
14.
So it was emailed on the 13th and recorded on the 14th and hand delivered on the 13th. Yet the request for information was delivered in August, as I read in the spinal column, but it was August 30th. So one leads it to believe that the library was very derelict and not quickly responding to the request. So I just want to make sure that it's clear. I have a better understanding of your expectations. You just said only the process itself will slow this down and stop it. Are we going to have a vote at some point in time that we can then go back to that says you have approved the bonds? I believe out of all of the trustees, contrary to what I just heard, there was one question regarding our ability to fund ourselves going forward, and that was delivered last, I'm going to use the word meeting, but it wasn't a meeting because it was really short, so last week. So that question was asked and answered, and no other follow-up questions by any other trustee has been delivered to the board, to my knowledge. So in the process, we have asked, and you have asked, and we have answered what I believe to be all the questions, except for the long list that came across at 2:30 today, which we will work diligently on. So again, my only request is during your discussion, come up with the milestones, what the timeline is, so the public has transparency of what the expectations is, and we can go back to having meetings that have very few people in them. So it would be much more productive, I think, for both boards. And if we can shelf the past, let's move forward, let's just get it done and figure out how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Margaret Ostrowski?
Thank you for giving us time to speak. I want to start this by strongly emphasizing I'm speaking for myself alone. As a citizen and voter of White Lake Township, Mr. Ostrowski, the director of the library, is not speaking through me. He can speak for himself as well as any of the White Lake Township board members. I am speaking for myself alone as a registered voter in the Township of White Lake in the state of Michigan. I am a voter of White Lake. As a voter, I did not vote for a community center. I voted for a new, larger, freestanding library to meet the current and future needs of White Lake citizens. I am happy that the White Lake Library Board and staff have a wonderful, positive vision to serve the White Lake citizens. This is what I voted for. Being jointly used meeting rooms and study rooms? Really, Mr. Powell? I was at the Commerce Township new library open house. Every room was being used by library patrons, and there were people waiting in line. If our votes don't mean anything to this White Lake Township Board, the democratic process is being impeded by this Township Board. I asked this Township Board, do you realize how White Lake Township has grown even in the 10 years I've lived here? Further growth of this area is most certain to occur, and we need a township library that is the jewel of the township. Obviously, you are not looking to the future of the education of White Lake Township citizens. If the citizens of White Lake have only one shot, Mr. Kowal, then let's have some vision and make it the jewel of White Lake Township instead of Kroger's being the largest building in this area. Let's showcase the public library. Demonstrate that White Lake citizens are educated and have a library that spearheads this growth of knowledge of the community. I am a citizen of White Lake Township. I am very disappointed in the performance of the White Lake Township Board. Most of the Township Board members do not have any idea what a library is about. When the vote comes up for next election, I know who I will be and won't be voting for. I and other voters will remember this attempt to bully the library and the voters into submission to your plan. I will not support this plan and will work as a free citizen of this democracy that we live in for the new wonderful plan that the library board and the staff of the library have worked so diligently to have the courage to continue to follow through with well, in the face of many roadblocks and attempts to discredit their vision for the citizens of White Lake. The library board was and is courageous and has vision for the children and adults of White Lake Township. Why not draw on the expertise and trust the library board and staff that they are very judicious with spending the public money and very fiscally responsible, all while the White Lake Township Board is holding the library hostage, bullying the citizens and the voters of White Lake and the library, and this is appalling. This country is a democracy, and the voters have spoken. Your roadblocks imply that the citizens of White Lake Township don't know what is best for them. Wake up, this country is a democracy, the last time I checked. You don't have to like what we, the voters, have voted for. Just remember, you do not serve your own selves. You serve the people of White Lake Township. Service requires humility. I petition and demand from you as a voting citizen of White Lake that you release the bonds and allow the White Lake Township Volunteer Library Board and the library staff to build what we, the voters, have voted for. The jewel of White Lake Township, a freestanding autonomous library. Thank you for your time.
This is still a meeting. It should be treated like one. Okay. Tricia Kohler, please. Tricia Kohler.
Broke the mic. Hello. Thank you for allowing me time to speak. I just this past June retired as a teacher with Huron Valley Schools for 29 years. And what I am feeling most angry and frustrated and confused about with this process is that the vote to build a library was passed last August, and yet we're still having to fight to get this done, to have the bonds released, which is what we voted for. If I was still teaching the students of White Lake Middle School, I don't know how I would explain to them that the voters voted for the bonds, and the bonds need to be released, and yet they're not being released. I don't understand how that, or why that happens here in the United States. If you could explain that, either in a, I know you put things on the website, if you could put a letter on the website explaining why that's okay, I would really appreciate that. And I do want the bond monies to be released. Thank you.
Mary Powers.
Big box stores are really not my thing. I really liked our small community, but we're growing, and that's just what happens in time. I am a library supporter. I voted for the library. I brought my children to the library. I really felt much better. I think Mr. Cole took a little wind out of some of our sails with his opening remarks, but words are just that. My question is, this study, why now? Why now? This study should have been done maybe back when the library first said we need a new building. Why are we waiting until these bonds should be issued to build the building that we voted for, and now we decide to do a 3-month study?
At that time, we didn't own the property. That's
well, but there's a lot of property in White Lake. The vision doesn't just happen overnight because now I got a piece of property. The vision is, what do we see in our community? And I understand there's many people who are retired in this community. So some of us voted for the library and some did not. Our vote should mean something, so I assumed we would have a new library and the process would continue to go forward. I would think as two boards, we'd be able to work together. It's disappointing because if we look to build for our community, and you approach us again with a proposal for a civic center, I'm not sure how many of us will support that, because how will we believe in that process as we are not quite sure how all this process is going now? I'm just a little confused that our vision was so short-sighted that we had to wait for a piece of property to say we need larger facilities. Seems like the study should be done. It's not just a study in this area, because actually the intersection of Elizabeth Lake Road and Oxbow is a terrible three-way stop corner, and the traffic with all these buildings that we're talking about. And a downtown area, if you don't have a community that already has a downtown area, I think it's really hard to build one. But I hope that the words are being spoken tonight are encouraging, that the boards can move forward and we can get a library, because libraries are not a thing of the past. Cell phones are not libraries. People are also libraries. Communities use the library for many purposes. And I hope that the library is built. I think the library board has done a very good job. And just like anyone else who puts an addition on your home or builds a new home, you have a big project and you may have to cut some things out of that project, because we all want to build bigger and better, but our budget may not allow us to do so. So the library is doing their due diligence, and they're looking at their building and how can they cut the costs to provide the 30,000 square foot building that the voters voted for. Thank you.
Susan Vanderwall. Do you have that third list?
Okay, so I'm Sue Vanderwall, and this is my daughter, Emily. This is Emily. She likes to be present and accounted for at our community meetings. And we also voted for the library. There are 4 voters in our house, and Emily is one of them.
My dada.
And her daddy. Okay, you step over here.
My dada.
Okay, step over. Okay.
I'm up for you.
So we're here to speak today, first of all, to thank everyone for all the hard work. What a great showing it is to have so many people come and support the library. I too support the library. I'm there twice a week with my kids, at least, sometimes 3 times if Emily can talk us into it. That being said, the library I voted for, I'm excited about. I know that it'll come true because I've personally never heard my board that I voted for ever tell me the library wasn't going to happen. In my understanding, it's always been, let's see how we can make that happen. Not that we weren't going to have a library that I voted for. I don't remember reading that. I don't remember seeing that. There's so much dispute, but I don't really get where that came from. I've had the privilege of talking one-on-one to many of the board members, the majority actually, over the last several weeks to better understand. Did I miss something? Did at any point you say we were not having a library? Because I might have to take a pretty firm stand. That is not the feedback I received, even prior to today's 2 o'clock meeting. Again and again, I've been told, we just want to do what's fiscally right. As a taxpayer in this community, where I plan and choose to raise my kids, I want that. I voted for that. I voted for this library board and this township board to do what's best for my taxes and my family today and in the future, because I have a little guy at home too. So, today I would like to express my appreciation to the library for fighting for what they believe in, and that is my vote. But I would also like to express appreciation for this board, who has remained silent through a whole lot of criticism by our community. This is not a high-paying, high-level job that they're doing here. Many of them ran for it for the good of our community. And I have faith that the vote that I casted, both for the new library, for the library board members, and for this board of trustees, is the right vote. And I have faith that they will do what's right for my dollar and all of yours. Thank you.
Christina Marble.
Good evening. I would like to say that I am in support of the library happening. I would also, I would like to say that I am in support of the library happening, and what I would like to ask for you to do is to have a town hall meeting about this civic center. You've already spent, let's see, $1.6 million purchasing the property. And I would like to, and I know that the other day at the budget meeting, I was told that the capital improvement plan is a wish list. But on it, for 2018, you have a $20 million library civic center. And what I would like to ask is, I do not want my library in the basement of a civic center. I don't want to walk into, when I take my kids to the library, part of the problem with our library right now is there's no parking. You have the township there, you have the police department there, and the library. So there is no parking. So I want to see our civics or our library happen, and then talk to us about a civic center. Put it to a vote. You know, this should be what our people want. Now, I've heard some people up here say that the library was a close vote. Well, our last presidential election was a close vote, but the Electoral College did its business. It worked. The library passed. That is not up for debate. We're not going to do a revote. You know, we don't do that. That's not how the democratic process works. So I would ask you to please consider just let's move forward on the library, and then let's move forward on the civic center. I would like to see a town hall, because when all these meetings that we're going to about the civic center, we do not get to speak at. You can speak afterwards. There needs to be a time that we can talk to you and get questions answered. So thank you.
Mr. Doug Hankus.
Okay, hi everybody. Doug Hankus, White Lake. I really want to share some information with you. I'm not really even talking to you guys right now, so just like no comments, please. That's a back at you. Okay, but anyway, last week I was at head of the lynch mob to get these bonds released. Tonight I am not, and two very important, enlightening things happened to me this week. And let me tell you about the first one. Was Monday night. I went to a board budget meeting with, I think everybody's here but Lisa, and there's about 6 of us in the audience. There was no overcrowding problem, so we stayed, and we had an opportunity to talk to the board and get answers and their perspectives, and it was extremely enlightening to me. And I want to share what I heard that evening. If I say anything incorrectly, somebody jump up and give me the hook. But I've heard that, first of all, the bonds have not been issued because the board are a bunch of jerks. The bonds have not been issued because there is a legal process that has to be gone through. I believe that Glenn Roscoe didn't quite understand a lot of the steps that were required. The library board got their own bonding attorney that talked to White Lake's bonding attorney. They agreed on what information to be submitted. And as far as I understand, They received almost all of it last week, but there's still a traffic study that has to be submitted by the library board, I believe. So even all of the paperwork is not in, so the board can make their decisions and so forth. So it hasn't been held up because of, like, we don't want to do this thing. It's been held up because there are things that are required to be done to issue these bonds, and they do have to be issued by the Board of Trustees. Now, the second part of this that was awakening is that I heard both Mr. Lilly and Mr. Roman exclaim that they were not concerned so much about if the library became a part of the complex. Because, as Terry Lilly said, it could take over a year, or maybe even 2 years before the government complex idea can get to a vote. And, you know, obviously the library can't join the complex without the complex being voted by you guys, right? Are you with me? No, for what? Oh, okay. I'm trying to stand up for you guys, okay? Okay. But so anyway, yeah, the guys up here said we're not going to make the library wait for 2 years until we find out if we're approved. You know, if they want to do their own thing, that's their right. They're independent. They got the vote. But we have to know that it's a solid deal. And I think the other thing that happened this week was I went to the library meeting last night, and no offense, Glenn, but with $8.6 million being approved, they're already $325,000 over budget. And that's, you know, okay. Anyway, there's things to be worked out. And they're getting worked out, and I don't think anybody up here is standing against the library just to make them wait to see if they can be part of the Civic Center. I think, you know, what they want to know is that everybody's got their eggs in order in one basket. It's a safe, secure deal, and, you know, we're not going to have any problems when it gets under construction, so forth, so on. So I think that everything's on track, and it's all going to get worked out, and I'm not worried about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hankus. Okay. Is it Diane Haas?
Thank you.
Is it Diane or Dean?
Deanne Haas.
Sorry.
I've been a White Lake homeowner since 2004, and I utilize the White Lake Library tremendously. My children were brought up in the area too, and they utilized the library as well. Today was the best birthday gift I ever got. Channel 7 Action News called me because I called them with the concern that I'm having with the township and the White Lake Library Board. I was mad about the issue. I'm sorry, I'm kind of nervous. And I'm so happy that they came to speak to both you and the library. I'm hoping that we can resolve an issue. I'm hoping that the township will release the bond money. You're not saving my tax dollars. You know, you call your homeowner's insurance and it goes up. Why? Building materials cost more. So it's not saving our tax dollars. The library did everything that they did, and obviously they have some paperwork that's missing, but I can't understand why we can't move forward in this. What will this make White Lake Township look like? And I'm glad that I called Channel 7 Action News, and everybody watch it because Glenn, and I don't know who else they interviewed at the township, but please watch it and call Channel Action News. Voice your opinions to them, because I think this is wrong in what you're doing. They took all the necessary steps. Now let's release the bonds. Why wait? Why are we playing games like this? Thank you.
Let me Lisa Jasnek? Jansek? I'm sorry.
I voted for the library. I find that my family and I use the Commerce one frequently. We attend tutoring. We need the rooms. Thank you. I voted for the library, and I was a little surprised when I received some of the flyers to indicate that there had been some roadblocks. So I went online to do some research to find out what was going on, if there was anything I could do to help out or to see what was going on. What I did watch on the library's website were some videos that led me to believe that things were back to the drawing board, that there was a proposed drawing and some ideas as to how many different facilities could be placed in that building. And I pulled out the library materials that I had been receiving over at least a year's period of time, indicating that surveys as to what the community's needs were, what the citizens wanted with regard to meeting rooms, and the new use of the library by millennials, which I know had come as some surprise to those planning community areas. So I decided that I was going to come to the meeting and request and encourage that the bonds be released consistent with the ballot proposal. I even pulled the ballot proposal to see if it did specify, as I thought, that the funds were going to be used for a library. I'm not opposed to a community center in the future or a downtown area, but I think that when that time arrives, those plans and proposals should be disseminated to the public, and we'll be given the opportunity to vote on that. And I would hope that the voters' response would be followed. What I heard in the meetings that were recorded were a lot of people who stepped forward and said, I didn't vote for the library, or I voted against the library. Well, the result was in favor of it, and I think it's too late to go back and to change minds. So I'm here to request and encourage that the library go forward as the library board has proposed. Thank you. I don't trust it. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Leroy, is your wife with you? Did you? What was your first name? I'm sorry. Livia. Okay. Thank you. Levita. L-A-V-E-D-A. I beg your pardon.
Well, it looks like I'm the deplorable here. We've lived in White Lake Township for 51 years. Oh. We've lived in White Lake Township for 51 years and been paying taxes, and it's always been a good place to live. But things are changing, like everyone says. We've got a lot of property that can't be taxed because of there are parks in the area, thank goodness. And it's just getting to the point, the way they set up looking for the people that pass the petitions, it looks to me like they just passed them until they got to their 51 or whatever it is their need, and they quit, because nobody ever came and asked me to sign that petition that I wanted to vote for the library. And we've got to start taking property rights into consideration here. You keep putting this on the property owner, and pretty soon we're not going to be able to own any property, because it's half of us that pay for the property. We've got trailer parks that don't pay up to it. We've got apartments, and we're senior citizens. We don't even use any of these facilities anymore. And I just think that we've got to look out for the property owners, and I think a system has to be found where people who actually own property are sure to get the information that you're going to have a vote. We didn't even know a vote was coming. Well, you know, we haven't had a spinal column for 3 months before that, and we was getting no information.
No. Yeah.
No. Well, we didn't know until the,
Okay,
and if the
into the
spinal.
microphone, we can't
and-
hear you.
And if the spinal column is here, I want to thank them for the news that they've been giving the last few weeks. It's been very helpful. We've gotten a lot better idea of what's going on since they've been back and they've been reporting. And in the morning, I'm going to, I want some Freedom of Information Acts. And I've got a letter that I'm going to send to Bill Schutte, and we weren't asked. And I want to know if this is due process and equality under the law that we're seeing when part of the people are asked, and then when they get to a certain point, they don't ask anybody else. They sit at their telephones, their groups, and they get all the people they know, and then everybody else just kind of gets left behind. And we really didn't want the library because we don't use it. And the center, that's got to be something completely separate. We can't I don't think you should put it with the library. So thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn Fessler.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to bring us all together. So many good comments have already been said. They don't need to be repeated, but hopefully I can say a few things that haven't been said yet. One of them is that I do believe when people are elected, they come to that table to do good. And I do believe that I know many of you, and you're good people. I think what happened here is a story. And it's a story that got down a track on the wrong path. And sometimes when that happens, I can see the train going back on the tracks a little bit. But I think when things got off track, it made the people feel distrusted, or not trusting. And I think one of the women that spoke earlier, it's true that this board, minus Liz, who was not on the board at the time, were asked by the library. And the library, you have to understand, is autonomous. They are elected separately. They run their business separately. So when they came, they thought of the township and said, should we go together? At that time, the answer was no, that we can't do it, we're not interested in doing it for about 5 years. That was the answer, okay? So the library, in good faith, went ahead by themselves, all right? I'm a researcher. I've done a lot of research, and I cannot find another municipality that has held a bond. And I also sat on a township board. I find this very unusual. And whether or not what your intentions were, this has caused a distrust in this community that's concerning to all of us. Because when someone votes, whether you like the vote or not, whether you use it or not, it's about the integrity of the vote. And that is why so many of the people are in the room. And that is because what happens from now on? This is a community that has for years and years, I go way back to Jim Reed and Marion, it's always been a good community. And what has happened now is made us feel unsure every time we're going to vote in the community. And that's a shame. But I know that we get second chances in life. And I know that forgiveness is in order for how we live our lives. And I think that if this got off track the wrong way, with comments of, well, we're going to stick you in the basement, or we're going to do something else, it was offensive to those people who worked hard to pass something that they believed in. So it's a story. It's our story right now. It's our story to say, these are all good people here in White Lake. And yes, we need to work together, but we got off on the wrong track. And we need to pull it back. And I'm glad to hear the comment that was never said, that this bond is going to be passed. The library hasn't done this every day of their life. This is so new to them. They needed advice for those people from the township or their attorney, their bond attorney, to say, what do I need? What do I do? That only happened within the last few days. And that's a shame because it delayed it. They could have gotten anything you needed to them a long time ago. And I think the story needs to have a better ending. And I think you have a chance for a second chance. And I think you need to relook at what's happened here. This is an autonomous vote, an autonomous organization within your township. The people have voted. I think that it's suicide to those of you who have held this up if you ever want to stay in this community with a good standing. Because I think that what is going to happen, that if you don't move this along quickly, that we will never trust again, and that's unfair to all of us. We want to trust you. We want to work with you. So it's our story. We're in it together, but now we've got a chance. And so I hope that you will take and not be the only municipality that I can find in the state of Michigan that has not released a bond promptly.
We have Melissa Schmentowski.
I have voted in almost every election since I turned 18 because I strongly feel it's important to participate in a democracy. In fact, I voted for most of you. I tell those who are unsure or apathetic that it is vital we participate, to make our voices heard, to get out, become informed, do research, and vote. I feel so strongly about the importance of this process that I've been an election inspector here in White Lake for the last 20 years. I don't work the elections because it's fun. I don't work because of the great hours or pay. I do it because it's important. In order for that process to function, we need capable people every step of the way to make sure that all of the rules are followed. Now, what do I tell those who are apathetic or who maintain that voting doesn't matter, that politicians do what they want anyway, or who call into question the entire process? Without thought, you've caused our community to distrust your actions. I'm starting to distrust your actions. I'm not confident that this will go forward without more roadblocks. It's interesting that you say, well, we haven't received things. When did the library start asking you what they needed? It was some time ago. You say that you're withholding the bonds for the new library. It's all about a fiduciary responsibility to our community. And then I read in the spinal column that you spent $1.6 million on land for a new civic center prior to coming to the voters to find out if there's support for this. Next, you spend $45,000 on a consultant to create a plan for that area that, again, you don't know the community is supporting. How is that responsible? I know that you've asserted that the library is the problem. They've been holding this process up. However, that's not true. I believe it was in May that they started requesting a closing checklist and none was provided. In fact, it wasn't until August that the library was even given a list of what was required. It's not because they didn't continue to ask. You say that you support a new library, but in the tapes of the meetings we can see a disregard for the project and a disregard for the citizens standing up to ask you to follow the wishes of the voters. Getting back to the constituents, at the meeting at Lakeland High School regarding the Civic Development District, we heard that our input is critical. And there was laughter around me because we know that if you honestly wanted or cared about our input, you would not be holding the library hostage while you go forward with your ideas for a new civic center. You would separate these two issues. You would listen to what the community said when we voted for a new library building, and you would release the bonds needed immediately. Look at the green around you. It signifies people who feel as I do, that you stop trying to confuse these two issues, that you separate them and release the bonds we voted for. Then you stop spending our money on your civic center plans until you do as the library did and take your request to the people. Put the issue on the ballot for the taxpayers who will be footing the bill to decide if that is something we are interested in paying for.
Just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Hang on. Teresa Johns?
Good evening. Teresa Johns, Whitelaw, I'm sorry. Oh, put your camera on. Okay. I sat here and listened to this all evening. I'm very confused as to why some people just don't understand the process of this bond issuance. You continually badger and bash this township board, and they are not the ones responsible to do the due diligence for the library. Mr. Rosso spoke today of transparency, which I'm a little skeptical of using that word, considering how you're not been transparent in your meetings at the library. Laugh as you may. I just don't understand how this process has gotten so out of hand. We have a liaison, Liz, who has had opportunity after opportunity to go between two boards. Liaison, you bring two boards together, you sit and you talk, you work out any issues that you may have. I asked you at one of the meetings, Liz, how come you haven't brought these two boards together? And your response to me was, no one's asked me a question. I found that, I didn't say that. Excuse me, you did. There was a quote, I have a quote, and I had somebody standing there with me, which was Susan. And you did say that to me. It was at the library board, in the basement at the library. It was several months ago. Maybe you don't remember. And I found that unusual, because the liaison does bring people together. They do ask the questions. Mr. Rosso has had numerous questions. He still didn't understand the process of the bond. He had to have an attorney he paid to, he used the attorney to educate himself in the process. At the meeting the other night, I asked him to educate me at what he learned. He couldn't say a word. So my point is this, a library is fine. Everybody's wearing green tonight. Green is for money. Do you realize that this board cannot release the money? Do you realize they cannot release the bonds? Does everybody have an understanding of that? And if not, please, would somebody please explain that tonight? I went across and I spoke to many of the board members. I have an understanding as to the process. And the process is not for the township to hold the hand of a library for their bonds. It's the point of the library getting up and doing what they need to do to get their bonds. If the library, excuse me, I didn't interrupt anybody when they were speaking. You want your library, that's fine. That's fine. But don't come to this board and bash the board when you should be looking at Mr. Rosso sitting right there in the audience and asking him, or go ask Liz, what could they have done to push this process further along? Instead of asking this board. Denise knew the process May 22nd. What happened? Okay, that's my dinger. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, I just find it very disheartening. We have a trustee and a liaison that could have done a better job at doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I believe we took care of everyone that was on the list. I'd like to thank you all for being very orderly. All of your comments were wanted and sought. We were able to do it in this venue in a very organized manner, and I appreciate that, and I believe the rest of the board appreciates that very much, as well as anyone else that wants to hear what's going on out there in the audience. At this time, we're going to kind of move a few things forward, and we're going to take and have comments by the trustees at this point in time, because with this information coming to us, we would like to have an opportunity to at least speak back to you. So, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. We've been quiet for a long time, and I thought it was time tonight for me to share my personal opinion, my understanding. This is only mine, not the rest of the board, so they can stand on their own. I've certainly been very discouraged over the lack of communication between the two boards. There's no reason for that. The White Lake Township Board and the White Lake Township, the Library Board, really should have already been talking about the concept of what should occur in a downtown area. Now, what a shame that that hasn't happened. And we've gotten used to this problem between the House, the Senate, and the President, and what a shame that we're having this in White Lake Township. So I personally, and when you hear the rest of what I have to say, I personally would like to sit down with the Library Board and to address some of the issues that I'm going to be bringing up tonight as to my personal opinion. It appears to have started when the voters approved a bond sale and the Library Board took that as a mandate for the Township Board to immediately sell $8.6 million worth of bonds. That's an enormous amount of money for the library. The Library Board has been very true to their mission, and they've said this to me, to build as large a building possible for the money approved. When we've asked, can you do with less, they've told us, we want every single penny, $8.6 million. We don't want a penny less. The township needs a new library, without a doubt. Every board member up here is on record agreeing to that. But we also need a new police station, a new fire station, a new township hall, a new community center, new senior center. But unfortunately, the truth about this process has been misrepresented and twisted to the point that most residents are blaming the Township Board that the Library Board has not been given their check for $8.6 million. Yet, first off, it's my opinion that that money is not the Library Board's money. That's the residents' money. And we have a fiscal responsibility here to make sure that it's being spent properly. That's why the autonomous Library Board does not have the permission or the legal ability to sell bonds. This board does. So although they're autonomous to run a library, they're not autonomous to spend the township's money. So the facts are that there are over 30,000 residents in the township, 24,000 registered voters, 2,003 of which voted for the library bonds, 2,000 voted against the library bonds, leaving 20,000 people that did not vote. The approval of the bond sale did not mandate the sale of $8.6 million. There was no mention of the size of the building or where it would be built. It only gave authority, not a mandate, just authority to the Township Board to sell up to $8.6 million. It didn't mandate the sale of $8.6 million in bonds. This equates to every homeowner in the township to be taxed $57.64 for every $100 of assessed valuation on their property in their home's value, and that is to go for 20 years. So the decision of this board in selling those bonds is gonna mandate that every homeowner in this township will in fact be paying for that library for 20 years. Now, the reason that the Library Board is even involved is that the Township Board is even involved is that the Library Board cannot sell bonds. The Township Board is responsible to all 30,000 residents to carefully evaluate and what we bind the township residents to in paying for those bonds for the next 20 years. If the economy fails, and like it did in the past, the Library Board will have nothing to say about that, and they won't care. This board will have to. The Library Board has done what they said they've done. They've gotten $8.6 million. They built a really big building. But this board here is then responsible to make those payments. Not the Library Board. This board will have to make those payments. So if the economy drops off, much like it did in the past years, this Township Board will have to try to find those monies, because if the house value drops down then our assessment drops down and we have no authority, no alternative but possibly to raise the millage rates in order to still pay those bonds, no matter if the economy drops or not. So, so it is very wise for this township board to try to work with the library board to provide the residents with the best new library building possible at the lowest price possible. One possible saving would be to share one site and possibly one building with the township hall. In the library's 30,000 square foot floor plan, there are 12 small meeting/study rooms. There are 2 large study rooms, or 2 meeting rooms. A township hall will need meeting rooms as well. Why have 2 separate buildings side by side needing all the same meeting rooms that will not be used all at the same time? Why not combine some of those costs? Those costs for the library shared for parking lot cost. We should share the landscaping costs. We should share the utility costs. We should share the maintenance costs. We should share the snow plowing costs. All those costs can be combined and be shared instead of all on the library and all on the township board. What a terrible thing to have 2 separate parking lots, 2 separate buildings not tied together with the same services, providing the same rooms, all of which are not being used. We should use those together. So, the township has been saving for years, I mean literally years, decades, and some monies were available to help the costs, the township has been saving for years and has some monies available to help the cost of the library board if the library board is willing to accept it. So we have funds available to help pay for the additional rooms, to help pay for additional parking stalls, parking spots. We have monies to help pay for utilities. We have monies to help defray some of the costs of foundations, and there are all kinds of ways the township can help lower the costs for the new library. It is totally unfair and wrong to blame this township board. This is another for operating funds. It is totally unfair and wrong to blame this township board for the library being short of operating funds. The library board is autonomous and decided to deviate from their budget and spend their operating funds, and this is all foiable, funds to purchase property and hire a building consultants prior to having the money. That is like any one of us, and a question was, this thought was brought up already, that is like any one of us adding an addition or installing a pool in anticipation of a bonus or a tax refund before we get that refund, because what happens if we don't get that refund? We should really wait until we're sure that that money's coming in. On the site plan approval process, and this is just really part of the process that everyone has to go through. Every development in every community in Michigan must receive a site plan approval. In White Lake, whether it's a subdivision, a commercial building, an apartment building, a township hall, or even, yes, a new library, the zoning ordinance must be followed. This requires a detailed review by the Planning Commission, township engineers, the township planners, the fire department, the police department, the road commission for Oakland County, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and the Oakland County WRC, Water Resource Commission. And all of their approvals must be received before the site plan can be approved for construction. Not one approval has been received from the library for the library site yet. My experience that this process takes between 4 and 12 months to complete. The library board has been too optimistic, in my opinion, in their expectations. So I, as a board member, am asking those of you that care to, please call or write the township board, me personally, the library board, to express your comments and concerns. I ask if someone could show, if someone could show a savings of $1 to $2 million in building a library, new library, that could reduce the money to be borrowed or potentially put that savings into a library operational programming, would the library board be willing to save that money? That's a question. So far, their answer to me has been no. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Lilly.
Thanks, Mike, and what an excellent presentation. I'd like to, every day that I come into the office, I feel like sitting down and writing a little scenario, as I did the other night at the board meeting, to try to explain to all of you, again, what Mike has explained to you, that in White Lake Township, we do have a process. I've been around for a long time in White Lake, and I firmly believe that those processes have kept our nose clean, and this board and boards before that for the last 20 years that I can remember have been very financially responsible, not only for our normal budgets, but as well as putting money away for future township projects and needs. One of the questions that was asked tonight is, why did the board pass the bond issue? And I have to say, on my behalf, when the language was proposed to the board and asked the board to approve, I voted for the library because I felt that not only does the township need a library, but also police, fire, and township hall, a senior center, and whatever, and have wished for 20 years, and particularly in that area, that be a vocal point for White Lake Township. A lot has been said about how delivery of information to the township hall. And I would say just last month an official submittal had been given to our planning commission where everybody's saying, well, I give this to somebody, or maybe one of the members on the board, or maybe even like the other night at the town hall meeting that was held at the Lakeland High School, that somebody sticks a pin in my nose and says, here, sign this. This is not the appropriate way to gather information or a personal conversation of what I may have thought or not. That usually if people want to file something really with the township, the appropriate way is to come to the clerk's office. We'll stamp the information and it be disseminated, whatever. And to my knowledge, I don't think anybody ever has a complaint about saying something was filed and not being disseminated to the rest of the members officially. Township library finances. Do I really care about the township? As Mike said, the library board is autonomous. They were given that authority to operate their budget. I don't worry about that. I have my hands full with the township, and Lord knows all the members, on occasion, I do express my opinion when it comes to a few bucks here and there. Even though it may not sound like much, it's the township has done very, very well. I was really taken back listening to some of the meetings that were taped with the library, particularly I believe the latest meeting. It was indicated from the library board that they were going to refuse to pay for the rest of the year the ability for the township to recoup salaries and benefits that we pay on behalf of the library. We pay those and then seek reimbursement from the library. Again, the township board responsibilities, I think Mike laid it out very well. The site plan review process, not one approval, as Mike stated, and there's a whole line of those approvals, whether it be sewer, water, road commission, site plan. Lord, there's probably a list of 15 or 20 long that the township, I believe, is responsible in asking that those permits be applied for and that those fees be appropriately paid, and then we're going to know what those costs were. Simply putting estimates of 1.6 million on a piece of paper doesn't mean that that project is going to be financially feasible. And I believe even the other night there was discussion at the library about the possibility of cutting those expenses already. Nobody's talked about what's going to happen when the library moves out of the library building. I guess it's just going to sit there and vacant, and somebody's going to have to assume responsibility. So when it comes to this communication between the library and the township board has really been a little bit non-existent. The library board, as Rick had indicated several months ago, very responsible in doing what they have done up to this point of planning and getting their stuff together and whatever. totally failing to realize that there's a process in White Lake Township other than just holding your hand out and saying, I want $8.6 million. And I have indicated in the meeting previously earlier in the week that until those permits and bids and whatever have been forthcoming and take the time to do that, if we're going to intend on starting construction, you know, early spring or whatever, that my request is going to be that those permits be applied for, that they're being granted, and we're going to know the cost of what those are. The question come up that I guess all of the board was supposedly asked individually whether we wanted a separate township library or a combined facility. And I got to say, for people who have known me since the early 90s, the plan has always been to buy a sufficient amount of property to include a township concept where people did not have to walk across a parking lot to gain entrance to the township hall, the library, or the senior center, that all of these properties have become over time difficulty to maintain and keep up because they are so separated, and inconvenience to customers of White Lake Township that you should have to go outside in the wintertime to enjoy all three of our amenities that we want. It's taken a long time. I can remember in 1990 that we started negotiating for some of the property on Elizabeth Lake Road. And as Rick had indicated, it was just shortly after the library had purchased those pieces that we were finally able to come to some negotiation acceptable to the township buying the adjacent piece of property. So this was not something that was planned, even though that we wanted to. It just ironically happened in a very short period of time, and that was one of the options that the board has and does have. But I've got to say for myself personally, and I've said this before, once our criteria is met, the site plan review, final site plan review, the plans have been totally approved, all the permits have been applied for, and bids of the building have been secured. Am I ready to say yes to move ahead? And I'm hoping that with the meeting today, feeling that was finally very productive, that hopefully an outline will be formulated in the near future that will outline not only all of the township requirements that we feel are important, but those as far as the bonds and the actions of the board to move those bonds forward can be secured February or March. So I'm encouraged with the meeting today, but I've been discouraged with some of the rhetoric that has been coming out that we're irresponsible and whatever. And I know known all of you, and I've known members of our board for a long, long time, and I believe all of you are very responsible people, and we'll make the right decision in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Philly. Andrea Voorhees?
I'm library card I'm library card number 29073001000648. I'm a mini golf supporter, Friends of the Library. So please don't say that I'm not a supporter of the library. I understand we, as a township, have to honor the voters' decisions, which will happen. As a board member, we also have to make hard decisions that may cause conflict and controversy, which we are at right now. I never said to anyone that the library would not happen. As a township representative, we need to do what is in the best interest of all of the residents. We have recently received some of the information from the library to continue with the bond process, which will help get it approved. Because as we know, whenever you need to get a loan from a financial institution, we just don't walk in, say, my husband and I have voted, we want our money. We have to go through the mandated process. So in closing, I hope that that the township board, the library can work together to do what is in the best interest for all the residents of White Lake.
Ms. Smith.
I first want to thank all of you. Can you hear me a little closer here? I first want to thank all of you for taking such an interest in our community and taking the time to come out and share your thoughts, ideas, and concerns with us tonight. I wish there was more of you here, but I do appreciate all of you that came out tonight. I'm going to be pretty, oh, that's better. I hope you can hear me a little bit better. I'm going to be pretty precise in my comments because my feelings on this have never wavered and never have changed. I am for the integrity of the vote in the election process. I am for upholding the vote of the people. I do believe the intent of the vote was to build a library. It is unfortunate that in the past the two boards have not had a lot of communication, and that was touched upon many times tonight. I do believe that's getting better. Is there room for improvement? Yes. But they are communicating, so that in itself is improvement there. I want to talk a little bit about my position as a liaison. I am a little bit different as my colleagues are as liaisons. In their perspective roles, they are voting members of zoning, planning, and parks and rec. I am not a voting member of the library board. So my job is to try to facilitate communication the best I can. These board member, the two members of the two boards have met throughout this process. It is getting better. Those aren't public meetings because there wasn't a quorum present. So I apologize for residents that think these boards have not communicated. They are starting to communicate, and it is getting better. Let's see. A couple other things that I wanted to touch on is the library. It is my understanding as a liaison that the library board is in favor of saving money and sharing cost when able in this project. And another thing I wanted to explain was the consulting process. I touched on this Tuesday night, and there is some confusion, I believe, in the community. This consulting process is not going at the end of the day to tell us that we save money or not with one building or two buildings. This consulting project is to explore an area, and I sure hope everyone here has taken the survey. If you haven't, the link is available on the Township website and the library website. It's to explore what's best for White Lake. This is an exciting opportunity, an exciting chance for us to, and a once-in-a-lifetime chance, to build a town center or civic center. But this consulting process that will be over in the beginning of November is not going to decide if we should have one building, two buildings, if it costs us more money, less money, one way or the other. So if anyone has any questions on that, please come speak to me or any member of the steering committee. So I just wanted to clarify that. Also, I'm glad to hear that the process has started for the bonds. It was not until I amended the agenda in August and our board did vote to start the process. So I am glad. This is the first time I'm really hearing this from my colleagues that we are going to start the process. I'm not for any stall tactics, and I hope this does proceed smoothly as possible. And I am, of course, for saving money when we can save money. Perhaps we can, share driveways, or I'm not sure because we haven't gotten that far down the pike, but there are opportunities to share money, or excuse me, share costs. And lastly, I'm just going to reiterate that I am in favor of issuing the bonds, and because I believe in representing the people, and this is what the people voted for. Thank you.
Mr. Roman. Recognize Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. Kowal. Can you guys hear?
They're all kind of...
Any better? No. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, dead Mike.
I want to start out by going back to May when Mr. Kowal put on a presentation really for the possibility of a joint building where the library and the township could share one building. You got to understand something about Rick and his background. He grew up as a cabinet maker, raised a family, kids, put his kids through college, and he did this as an entrepreneur with Home Depot and Lowe's opening up right across the street from him, basically trying to take his business away from him. Rick thinks economically, as do I as your treasurer. We thought it was a great idea to do a combined building. That's just the way we're tuned. We think about money first. But when Rick made the proposal, it was just that. It was a proposal. I thought Rick was clear that there were options as far as size, who would go where. I think the way it came across is that the library felt we were really trying to shove this down their throats, and for that I apologize. When it comes down to it, library is a separate entity. It has a separate board. It has autonomy when it comes to spending. We cannot tell the library how to spend its money. And the library, to me, has clearly rejected that proposal. They want a separate building. I'm fine with it. I think that's how we move forward. You can't force the library into doing anything they don't want to do, guys. So I think we need to move forward from here with a separate building. I do caution the library. 8.6 million is your top dollar, and as you guys have seen, things always cost more than you think they will. I also caution you to make sure that you look into all of our ordinances. There is no special treatment because you're the library. Just as our township, when we put sewers in, we had to pay all the fees. We had to follow all the rules, and there's a lot of them. I don't think at this point the library knows all of its costs, and I know that they're working at it, but be careful. We had a great meeting today. I think this meeting today between Terry, Rick, and I, the library, and the bonding professionals probably should have taken place a few months ago. Very enlightening meeting. I think we all learned a lot. You know, I came out of the meeting and there was so much information thrown at us that kind of the last statement I made to our bonding attorney and municipal financial advisor, as well as the library's bonding attorney and their construction manager, was, guys, do you think you can all work together knowing what your constituents want? The answer was yes. So I really came out of that meeting feeling good. One thing very interesting about the bonding process and moving forward, in order to move this process forward, the library has to make a decision as to which parcel they're going to build on. They are moving forward with a separate building on their lot. So if the library decides to change their mind, you need to do it now. Just a little bit about the bonding process. It's been mentioned so many times that the bonds need to be issued already. Bonds are sold. I don't think issue is the right term, but you have to have a bidder that's willing to buy the bonds. In order for that to happen, a package has to be assembled with a whole lot of information. These are tax-exempt bonds, which make them more appealing to buyers because when they receive their payments on these, they don't have to pay tax on the interest income. A much more complicated package than a non-tax exempt bond issue. That said, A prospectus has to be put together that goes with the package, and then the bonds are basically bid. That will take place in the future. Before that happens, a bond resolution will be prepared along with an agreement that will list the responsibilities of both the library and the township. From what I gather, that's probably 4 to 6 weeks out. Want to talk about actually getting the money from whoever it is that buys these bonds. The library's target date for putting a shovel in the ground is March of 2018. Now, if by waving a magic wand, I could get that $8.6 million in today, we would then have to pay interest from now until March at the rate of about $30,000 a month. Does it make sense to anyone to get the money now when we're not going to start digging until March? It doesn't. People, what's really important is that we make sure and help the library to make sure that they have cash flow to get them through from today to when the bond proceeds actually do come in. And I think March is probably a reasonable expectation as far as the bonds actually being sold and the money coming in. I hope that helps with the timeline. What I've said is not in stone, because at this point we're letting the professionals that represent the township and the library both work together. I did speak with the library treasurer this afternoon, Joe Fennell, and I'd asked Joe for a letter asking the library to please submit a letter to the township, asking the township to help them out with their cash flow by deferring the reimbursement of the operating costs that Mr. Lilly had mentioned. We've not received it yet. In Joe's defense, he was out of town for a good while. So I think as a courtesy, I'd really like to see that letter come in from the library. And finally, Rick, I know you haven't spoken yet, but if you could explain a little bit to the crowd about the CIDI campus study and why it's really so much more than just whether we have 1 or 2 buildings, I think that would help.
Yeah,
and then before I forget, my wife told me, because she's been on Facebook lately, she told me I need to mention that the money that came from the land, the $1.6 million, I guess a lot of people have been asking where that money came from. It came from the Township's Improvement Revolving Fund. In there was just under $400,000 that we took in as proceeds from the sale of the Porter Road Farm, and then approximately another $850,000 that we took in from the sale of property across the street from Myers on the south side of M59. So that's where that came from. I think that's all I had, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Ruggles.
Well, these guys have said everything. I don't know what's left. When it comes to the library, last summer I spent some time. Larry asked me if I would teach a class at the library with horses, so I loaded them up in trailers, came over, brought some individuals that work with me. We spent an afternoon over there and had a great time. For the last few years, I've been more than willing to provide pumpkins for the Great Pumpkin Hunt in Indian Springs, which I think is actually put on by the Optimist Club, but Larry asked me to bring the pumpkins, which I'm more than happy to do. And you know, I look forward to continuing that. I enjoy donating my time, whatever I can, to the library. I'm in favor of a new library. I have been. We've been able to speak on this issue many times. I think publicly 3 times at board meetings now. I've been able to voice my position. And I think the term release the bonds is a poor choice of words. I don't know. We're not holding them hostage. More than happy to issue them when we can. When we get the information, we follow through with everything that's necessary for us to do our jobs and to make the best choice that we can for the residents of this township. I think that's what I'm tasked with, and all the other trustees here are. We're put here by you to do what is in your best interest, and I don't know that we ever got off track with that. I wouldn't say that I need forgiveness, as mentioned. I don't think I've done anything wrong, but I'm going to do what's right, and I think this board's going to do what's right in the end. Terry's had the chance to outline the steps that will take place, and Mike, and once that happens, the money's going to come, and we're going to build a library. So I look forward to that. If I had been asked by the library board if I would be willing to float the money to keep them open, I would have said yes. It doesn't appear that I need to be asked. It's going to happen either way, but that would have been my response. So once again, it's a pleasure here to speak with you, and look forward to the rest of this. Look forward to the new building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. Well, first of all, again, at the risk of repeating myself, thank all of you for coming tonight, and thank all of you for going through the process. You know, social media is a good thing, and it's a bad thing. You know, it's a good thing when you want to get the right things out there. It's a bad thing when you got frustrated people who vent and compile facts and opinions that are not based on fact. And unfortunately, it makes great fiction reading. So that's what that is. White Lake Township is in an enviable position because of the actions of this board and previous boards. We've been extremely careful, extremely cautious with what money we spend, and we try to spend it in the right places. And we try to use funds that are available to us in a prudent manner. We've received very, very favorable grades, comparable to an A to an A+ from our auditors every year for the last several years that have come in, and we have great people that work in our offices to make sure that we follow everything. I forgot a gas receipt one day. Boy, did I catch hell for that, okay? And that's how far down it goes, a $36.08 gas receipt. They want to know where that money's going and what it's for. So we have great people in place. You know, I was a little puzzled when I found out one day that when I proposed in May, I think it was May 22nd, that we have a joint library board / township board meeting to talk about things. And I had a couple people tell me, a couple board members and some of the public told me, you know, Rick, I don't think anybody's ever done that before. I said, nah, you're kidding me. You mean the history of the library? All this, there's never been a joint meeting? And I asked and I asked and I asked, and all I got was, well, I never remember one. So why? I asked myself, why has this not happened? What was with the dissension? I don't understand it. I never understood it. So, and I'm hoping that we can all go forward and try to make the right moves, and people understand that the only intent of the board here is to make sure that this is a viable and sustainable project, because we had that responsibility to have that due diligence. You know, our fiduciary duty is to make sure that we do that, and I know you've heard that term over and over again. When you look and you read every now and then on the internet, councilman does that, councilman takes this, somebody does that, that does the other thing, and you hear those types of things. Those are real situations that happen. And I will tell you that I'm very proud to be a part of this community
to see where we all kind of watch and check and balance each other. I mean, no one's doing anything out of the line, because I think everybody that's up here really isn't in it for the money, okay? We're here because we want to try to make a difference in our community. That's why I did this. I'm a scrapper. I'm a survivor. But I'm also a guy that tries to figure out ways to do things out of the box. And the vision that I had was not necessarily a mandate. It was a vision. Because one thing concerns me. Across this country, you will see, and I have read, that some libraries have closed down because their communities have no longer been able to sustain them for one reason or another. This country's gone through some really peculiar things here in the last many years. And what for most of you will really wake up is 9/11. No one thought in their right mind that groups of people would get in airplanes and really fly suicide into buildings and kill people. And all the bombings and the different things that we've gone through. Then we see the economic downturn. We see the stock market take a dive. Your mom and dad told every one of you, your grandparents told every one of you, buy real estate, you can't go wrong, invest in a home, invest, invest. Try being in a business that you're selling people product in their homes, in particular kitchen and bath, or in a building business that I'm also in. When people have lost 40 to 60% of the value of their house, you think a kitchen's important then? So you got to reinvent yourself. So it's important to try to watch what you do and spend the money wisely. The whole thought process here was try to put the library in a position of perpetuity. And if the library could have been part of a single building, which around this nation there are multiple places that were doing that, including Springfield Township to the north of us. And it wasn't such a bad idea, but maybe because it was my idea, it wasn't liked. I'm not sure. But the idea was to put the library in a position that if it was conjoined with the power of the township, the power of a community hub and the civic center, that it would have a financial sound backing behind it. If everything went to heck in a handbasket and an operating millage or two didn't go through because we fell on a hard economic time and it just happened to be coincidental with a millage, now what? If you're in a group, you can fend for each other. You can take and cover shelter. And that was my intent. My intent was to establish the perpetuity of the library, to make sure the library is around for a long, long time, because it's part of this community. We've been in a building over there that was, God knows, a horse barn or God knows whatever else, fire since 1930 something. And we've made with what we've had to do, and Mr. Lilly gets a lot of kudos, because I'll tell you what, I remember before I even got anywhere interested in getting involved in this process, driving down the road, looking in the window at 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and there's this guy up on an extension ladder putting ceiling tiles in on his own time. So no one can ever tell me he doesn't have a love for this community or concern for it. So if we seem maybe a little overzealous or a little overprotective, that's because we are. That's why you elected us. That's why you elected me. That's why you elected the rest of these board members. You elected me to do a job. You may not like what I do all the time, but I have one objective, and my objective is to make sure that this township is solid, rock solid, and we make the right decisions. I don't have all the answers. You know, like Henry Ford and Abraham Lincoln, I'll surround myself with the people that do, and I'll get the information that I need. But more importantly, and what's most important, every subdivision meeting I go to, every event that I attend, I ask the public, what's important to you? And I get a real cross-section of it. Some people want an independent library. Other people are like, we don't need a library at all. I have my cell phone. You know how many times I heard that during the election? I was dumbfounded how many times I heard that. And I think I even said something to Marilyn when I was talking to her out at the polls. I says, this might be a tough haul to get this millage passed. But it did go through by a hairline margin, but it went through. We live in a democratic process, but there are checks and balances for everything we do in this country. And if you read the process and understand the process, the balance is that this board has the final say to back up those bonds. It's the intention of this board to follow through with that. But by God, this board wants to make sure that what we do is going to work. Because the one thing I don't want to see is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I'm retired someplace else, or I'm worm food, whatever it is, and I look down and I see library closes because bonding was not approved for operating millages or over the years, and all of a sudden now you have a building that I guess we could rent out to Art Van or somebody. But that's the kind of thing that I think we're afraid of. And don't think it doesn't happen. There's something close to all of us that happened. Look at the Wayne County Jail. There's a boondoggle of which I don't know if Wayne County will ever recover from. And those people have a whole heck of a lot more money than we do. But government can't fail, government can't screw up, bonds can't work out. What do you mean it can't work? Well, there you go. There's a perfect example. So that's why we're being as particular as we are. There's not a single person up here that's badmouthed anybody. I haven't. I've been kind of appalled by the behavior of the people that I've seen on and what I've caught, but you're going to get mob rule and mob mentality, and they don't think things through. And that's unfortunate. You know, we want to do the best we can and try to move it forward. The CIDI plan is something that is very important. Take the library right out of the equation. Take it out of to say it didn't even exist. We would still order this plan for this area because it's being responsible. It's being responsible to know what the community wants, what the community needs, how it's going to look, how it's going to carry itself from now and for the future. It's not just something that's a flip of a light switch or a whiff of a pen on a drafting table. This takes time, effort, money, and thought. I had it put to me one time a long time ago, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. Fail to plan, plan to fail. And that's exactly what happens with most of the things that go south. There wasn't enough proper planning. You want to make sure you got all your I's dotted and T's crossed. The library right now is kind of struggling with its building, finding out that that 30,000 square foot structure may not be a 30,000 square foot structure because the dollars may not all work out. They have very good people working on it, and they're trying to do value engineering to see what they can do to make it happen. But things may change. That horizon may change. It may go to 28,000 square foot or 25. I'm not sure. That's yet to be determined by the library board. But there may be changes in order to do it for that particular price. So we'll see what the future is going to hold as this process goes on. You know, this board never said not to issue, but we said let's do our due diligence, do our homework, try to get through a feasibility study to see what it says about the entire area. Because what if they come back and say, oh, you know what, that site plan you approved, well, this new concept, you know what, we really think you should have had X type of landscape, or X type of streetlights, or Y type of sidewalk, or this, or that, or the other thing. All this information is pertinent in trying to make this decision process. So it's try to have some continuity with a civic center area. And that is not a quick or easy, or at this moment in time, a fun process. But it needs to be done. So, I will tell the public that I believe this whole process is now more out in the open than it's ever been. I think everybody may understand it a little bit better, understand the responsibilities of this board, understand where the responsibility lies for this money. A, the board, B, each and every one of the 30,000 plus residents in this community. So hopefully we'll all kind of get together and move forward. An interesting thing, Marilyn got me to sign up for a friend of the library. Marilyn. What I had in my pocket at the time, I was cooking hamburgers. So, you know, I support it. My mom supported it. My mom was an avid bookworm. I heard the story about my mother. No one needs to tell me. She's been talking in my ear for the last 2 months, okay, that night. But she also tells me, she was a little French woman. She also told me, if you can get $2 out of a quarter, keep squeezing it. So that's why I'm doing my job. I've had to think out of the box for a long time here. So it's never been an intent to undermine or steal somebody's mojo because this is what they want to do. The whole idea here was to take a look and look at other communities that are doing similar things. Locally, nationally, internationally, and are having success with it. So we're all looking out for the benefit of the township as a whole. Thank you. With this, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess.
Nice job, Mike.
Thank you very much. You should have handed out cards. Okay. You want to know more?
Call to order, please. Thank you. We'll give it a 30-second window here. We're going to go on to item number 6, which is the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A motion?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Maybe, Mr. Supervisor, would like to comment on 6F and the appointments, at least name the appointments.
I'm sorry. On the, I beg your pardon?
If you want to have discussion.
If we want to have discussion, we have to remove them consent.
Oh, okay. So you need a motion to remove item 6F from the consent agenda. I'll make that motion.
Support.
The motion support, it's been removed and will be the first item after consent agenda. Okay, moving on to consent agenda.
We have to vote.
Motion, yes, we do need to vote. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. None opposed. Okay. Thank you. Okay. You like that, huh, Terry? Okay. Do you want to restate the motion for the consent agenda? Who made the motion?
I'll rephrase my motion to exempt item F from the consent agenda. Support.
We have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda passes. Item 6 on 6F on the consent agenda. What is your questions, Mr. Ruggles?
Oh, I just thought I'd like to announce everybody here your appointments to the boards.
These appointments that came to the board were from the suggestion of the planning director, Sean O'Neill. We always have a difficulty in trying to find people to come in and serve the public for one reason or another. Some of them don't like to get hammered by the public. Imagine that. So Mr. Nicholas Shilzak is term to expire December 18th of 2019. Miss Allison Swanson is an alternate. The term to expire December 18th, 2018, and Mr. Cliff Siebert, alternate, term to expire December 18th, 2018, and that's for the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Planning Commission, Mr. Anthony Noble, his term to expire December 18th of 2018. These are the interested parties that came forth, and at the recommendation of Sean O'Neill, our Planning Director, I would like to approve these appointments.
Mr. Supervisor and colleagues, board members, Mr. Nicholas Schilek is an extremely good member of the ZBA. I'm the board liaison to the ZBA. He has a great handle on the issues in the township, and so I'm in full support of that. I've not met Mrs. Swanson yet. Cliff Sieber is a professional engineer and extremely knowledgeable and very, very good appointment. And I'm not sure about the Planning Commission, but I certainly support these nominees, so thank you.
Are there any of these folks present tonight? No. No. Okay. All right. Any other questions? I'd like to move to approve these appointments. Need a motion?
I'll move to approve the appointments as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We have motion and support by Liz. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Moving on. Bet you wish you didn't come to this meeting tonight, huh? We have a presentation from the Huron Valley Youth Assistance presentation.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight from Youth Assistance. As some of you know, my name is Mary McDonald. I served as Highland Township Clerk for 16 years, and at the last election I retired from that, and I am now a trustee on the Highland Township Board. I've served on the Youth Assistance Board for the past 5 years, and the chairman of the board, Don Green, who is also a Milford Township Supervisor, has been on the Youth Assistance Board, I think, for about 17 years. He couldn't make this rescheduled meeting tonight. He sends us regrets, and I'm going to tell him how long I was here tonight. But we really do appreciate you allowing us to talk with you this evening. Youth Assistance has been in existence since 1953 and provides counseling, referral services, family education, mentoring, and many other programs to the youth and families of our communities. I think you were provided a sheet that shows you the percentage breakdowns of the clients that they've served, and we also left some information with Supervisor Kowal and Clerk Lilly as to the programs that we provide if you want any further information on that. The Youth Assistance Worker is provided by the Circuit Court Family Division. She works out of our office, which is now located in Brooks Elementary School in White Lake here. The office space is provided by Huron Valley Schools, and CDBG funds can be used. They have been provided by Milford Village, Highland Township, Milford Township, and White Lake Township to provide tutoring, some camp programs, and some, it's very limited use the CDBG funds can be used for. So the utilities, the phone, fax, copier, office supplies, postage, and the clerical staff, and any other supplies required to run that office have to be provided by the local municipalities. Last year, those expenses totaled over $26,000. The sponsorship money to pay for that has been provided by Highland Township and Milford Township for the past 21 years. We do fundraising occasionally too to get some of that money, but the Youth Assistance Board is here tonight to ask White Lake Township to sponsor some of that program. Based on the clients served from your community, the split would be about $9,282 if you would be willing to look at sponsoring the portion that comes from your community that's being served by the Youth Assistance Board. We'd also like to invite a member of your board to join the Youth Assistance Board. We meet once a month at Brooks Elementary. We have, I think, 7 board members now. One of the board members is the school liaison officer at Milford Township, which Highland provides. So maybe your liaison officer at Lakeland would also like to be a part of that board. It is one of the best organizations I've ever been involved with as far as the work that they do. They provide valuable counseling and assistance, referral services to the youth and families in the area, and it prevents children from being part of the court system. It gives them an option to avoid, that record on their name. And we had great testimony at our board meeting when we were looking at providing money last year at our budget time from families that were helped out by this. They were really grateful that it kept their kids out of that legal system that can be such a long-term mark on their record. So it really is a great service to your community, and we hope that you will consider sponsoring it this year in your budget. Again, I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, or the information in that folder, the Youth Assistance Office phone number is in there too if you have any questions of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody have a quick question?
I do, or a statement. Obviously, this time of the year is our budget session, so this is a great time to hit us up.
That's
number
why I'm
one.
here.
Number two, during the process of the budget hearings and budget sessions we've had, we kind of discovered that we have $4,000 sitting in last year's budget that really is earmarked for Huron Valley Youth Assistance. And we have, at least in our preliminary budget
Mike,
hearings.
we do need to get a clarification on that
Yeah.
first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then, but we have earmarked $5,000 for this next year, at least in our current discussions. So,
That's
thank you.
awesome. That will really be appreciated.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, we will take it under advisement, and, you know, I appreciate you coming. We just want to make sure that this is a lawful expenditure, and we'll need to do a little look into
Okay.
that, into that, and find out what we can and can't do, and have some
Perfect.
further conversation over it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Item 8, minutes. Approve the minutes of regular board meeting of August 15th. Any motion?
One question of clarity on the minutes.
Oops.
When Clerk Lily amended this agenda, and then I did as well, there was some discussion here. Can that just be noted that that was discussion? Some of the discussion got put under 10I. Just basically, I'm not asking to amend the content, just the format.
What page, Liz?
7 of 11.
Oh, under 10 on library discussion. What is it that you want clarified?
Just can we note that discussion actually took place here at the amendment process, not later in the meeting?
Any comment, Mr. Clerk? You're the keeper of the records.
So as I understand, you want that added on as a separate item to be added on? For discussion?
No, not separate. If we could just add that discussion where it says it was moved by Trustee Smith, supported by Trustee Powell to approve the agenda as amended, add item 10I, which we did.
Right.
But we actually had a majority of that discussion up here before public comments, and then we picked it up again later as an agenda item. So can we just note, otherwise we're not going to line up with the video. I'm just asking if we can note here where it's bold, can we just note that discussion on 10I took place here in the minutes?
So library bond process discussion took place in a variety of locations, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it didn't actually all happen in 10I, it happened while we were amending the agenda.
Is there substance you're concerned about?
No, I'm not asking to change the content, just asking to
But are you saying
note.
that there's substance that's missing?
No.
It's all here, you're just saying the location
Just the
isn't-
location is not exactly right.
That's how it was recorded.
Come up with something.
Okay, we'll take a look at it, see what
I
we
just thought
can
maybe
do.
like, please note, discussion took place here.
Give me an email. Give her. We can forego approving these till the next meeting if we want to.
That's up to you, I'm not asking to change any of the wording.
So bottom line is, if we were to just put library bond process discussion, and in parentheses, discussion took place at various locations through the meeting, instead of just in this location, just here.
I think that would be sufficient.
Okay. So,
I'd
Mr.
like-
Supervisor, there are two other spots, one on page 6 and one on page 7. Under G, third paragraph down, let's promote Trustee Roman a little bit and make him Treasurer Roman. And on page 7, really the third paragraph, or second paragraph down, we need to make that trustee Roman as well.
Treasurer. Right?
Treasurer, yes, from trustee. Thank you.
That can't be both.
No, we're not going to let you.
Well, he actually technically is a trustee.
Yes, I know that.
Okay, as noted, do we have a motion to approve?
Support.
I'll make that motion and you
Then
can
you
support.
did make it. I'm sorry.
Yep.
We have motion from Mr. Powell, support.
Yeah, support.
From Mr. Roman, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay. This is a public hearing resolution, the public hearing for confirmation of the role of emergency sewer connection 2017-01 SAD, resolution number 17-034, confirming a special assessment role for SAD designating emergency sewer connections 2017-01. Counselor? I know that.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to open the public hearing for discussion.
We have a motion to
Support
open.
that.
We have a support, and we need a roll call vote, please, to open.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Andrew Boyce?
Yes.
Mike Paul?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Cool?
Yes. We're now open to public comment.
Yeah, we're going to get tons of comments on this one.
Yes, we are. Essentially what this is what we've done, just so the public knows, is that we set up the emergency sewer hookup for people that had failed septic systems that were within reach of a sewer system. We had one participant in this. The assessor and I had discussions on this. This has been before the board before in its preliminary course, and there is no reason not to move forward with this resolution. Anyone from the public have a comment or concern or question? I make a motion to close public comment.
You're making the motion?
Yeah, why not?
I'll support it then.
Okay. Motion, support, roll call. Close.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Andrew Boyce?
Yes.
Mike Paul?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Cool?
Yes. I can entertain a motion to pass this.
Making a motion to approve resolution 17-034.
Support.
We have motion, we have support. We do not need roll call for this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Okay, moving on. Item number 10A, Resolution 17-035, the 2018 Board of Trustees meetings. Mr. Lilly, I do have a question.
I just want to acknowledge to the board that the meeting minutes were made up for this year. There was 2 meetings that were changed due to clerks' conferences, but just wanted that acknowledged. If you prefer to move them back to record dates, that's your option. So.
Might be a third one. In April, the MTA?
Yeah. I think we're good for FTA.
You sure?
Yeah.
Just wanted to double check that.
I don't get completely why we have to change. We all miss meetings in different ways, so I personally am going to vote no, because I like it when we are always on the third Thursday or third Tuesday of every month. It makes all our lives easier. It's easier when a resident comes up to me and says, "When are your meetings?" And I don't have to sit there and think, okay, what month is this? And then go from there. So I think they should always be on the third Tuesday of every month.
Okay, except that I am questioning the, okay, so it would be April 17th.
Can we wait to have that date confirmed for MTA? Or does this?
No, the MTA is the week of the 22nd, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just making sure, because I don't want people to show up and, oh, okay. Oh, okay, I guess that, are you good with that? Anybody have a question?
All Tuesdays?
November looks good.
Okay, any motion? Did someone make a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion to approve Resolution 17-035, in which we define the dates of the meetings as presented.
The motion, we're looking for support.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Opposed.
Yeah.
Oh, one opposed, excuse me, but the ayes still have it. Okay. 10B, Resolution 17-037, Capital Improvement Plan. This would be to adopt the capital improvement plan that's been put forth and printed in a book, which is basically an idea book, or as Mr. Ruggles put it the other day, a wish book as to what could be done in our community, not necessarily what will be done in our community. And we need to have this criteria in a planning type of binder, that it gives us the goals and things that we want to look at and potentially do in our community, so that we qualify for grants when they are available, because so many grants require you to have this plan in place even to apply for the grant. Any questions from the board? Mr. Ruggles.
I'll just say that the planning commission, we went through this in depth and found anything that we could find that we thought needed to be changed or fixed, and so now it's sent up here to us.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, yeah. I'll make the motion to pass Resolution 17-037, approving the capital improvement plan 2018-2023.
We have a motion on the table, looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Andy Voorhees. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay. Going to new business. We have a fireworks permit for Lakeland High School. Anything we need to know about the permit, Chief?
Well, the fire marshal is working with Lakeland to make sure they comply with all aspects that's involved in that permit process. Including having licensed professionals perform that.
Gen X. They're well established in our community, so I'm comfortable with that. Any questions from the trustees? None? Can I get a proposal?
I'll make a motion.
A motion, not a proposal.
Make a motion to support the fireworks at Lakeland High School on October 6th. October 6th.
Support, because I can watch that from my house.
Okay. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
We have item 11B, request to authorize and approve bid to begin work on the well repair and cleaning. Mr. Potter, you want to give us a brief summary?
Yes. We requested bids from 4 companies that have done work in the township in the past: Peerless Midwest, Northern Pump and Well, Lane Northern, and Brown Road. We received bids back from Peerless Midwest and Northern. The 2 companies took a little bit different approach to bid on the well that needs to be repaired. Realistically, we don't know what's wrong with that well until we pull that out. So Peerless bid just the price to pull the well and inspect, and essentially would proceed with the change order and actual quote when they determine what's wrong with it. Northern, on the other hand, for that well, quoted what they felt was worst case scenario, and quoted me essentially a laundry list of parts that could possibly be replaced. However, that did also include what they call sonar jet cleaning, which is kind of a proprietary cleaning method. Now, taking that well 1 at Village Acres out of the equation and looking at the other 2 wells that we were just needing cleaning on, Northern was, their bid came in at $15,250 to clean those 2 wells. Actually, I take that back. $15,250 for the 1 well, $7,453 for the other well. Peerless, on the other hand, so that came to a total of $22,703. Peerless for the 2 well cleanings came in at $13,300. Savings of $9,403. Peerless's methods are well-established cleaning methods, double disc agitation, chemical cleaning. Northern uses proprietary, again, sonar jet cleaning method that I'm not very familiar with. I've seen that done before. I've worked with Northern a lot in the past. So we felt more comfortable accepting the bid from Peerless Midwest for $17,300 for the project. And I would like to ask the Township Board to approve the project and approve the supervisor for authorization of the change order on the cleaning up to essentially the Northern price of $44,831.
44.
We can do it that way, or we can approve the 2 cleanings and pulling the well and wait for the change order to come in, and I can come back to the board next month for approval of the actual price.
I'd rather not have the well down.
Well, except that I believe it's a backup well, is it not? It can operate, the system can operate without it?
The system can operate without it. The well one at Village Acres is the one that needs to be repaired. It's a 1,500 gallon per minute capacity well. Well 2 at Village Acres is one of the wells that needs to be cleaned, which leaves us only 1 well in operation at Village Acres. So we'd like to get these cleaned sooner than later, but like I said, we don't know what's wrong with the well until we pull it out.
I guess from my viewpoint here, certainly, did you call Lane and Brown and ask why they didn't submit bids?
Brown responded to me. I did call both companies. I left a message with Lane. I haven't gotten anything back from them yet, but Brown did respond and said that basically they're booked up right now, and they appreciated our request with them, and they'd like me to continue to include them in requests for bids for possible future projects.
My personal concern, Mr. Supervisor, is that there's such a large difference between these two. It'd be great to have one of the other 2 bid and find out where it's at. To leave it the way being requested, once it's pulled, you've virtually given Peerless a carte blanche to not hold down anything. They're not bidding against anyone anymore. So all of a sudden you're writing them a check for $30,000 more because it's under what's being requested here. So there's no checks and balance that we talked about earlier. And so I would much prefer to authorize the wells 1 and 2, or however you presented that. Pull 17, let's find out what's really wrong, and then request some additional bids to address that particular 1 well.
Well, I think
I
that.
have a question about that, if you don't mind.
No, go right ahead.
So if Peerless pulls that well and takes it back to their facility, I don't know how I would get bids other than going by Peerless's analysis of what's wrong with the well.
That's a good point, but I just don't like a blank checkbook to them. That's my concern.
Well, unfortunately, we get into situations like this where you have something that, if you pull that out, there's no guarantee anybody's even going to want to look at it if somebody else pulls that. And at this point, we've got 2 people that have not even, one that has not responded, and the other one has said thank you, but no thank you.
So can they pull it just before our next meeting, a week before our next meeting, so that it's not out of commission as long as an entire month, and then bring it back to us?
Yeah, my experience with these is they take quite a while to fix if there's going to be extensive repairs necessary. There's no guarantee that we'll get it back in 3 or 4 months.
Mr. Roman?
I appreciate what you're saying, Mike. I would rather trust Aaron's judgment, and once Peerless pulls it and looks at it, I think you're going to be in the best position to judge if whatever they want to do is overpriced, is underpriced, is fair. Do you feel comfortable making that decision on your own?
What I could do would be request unit pricing from some of the other companies. Like we discussed this in the last meeting, that going forward, because of this problem where it's underground, it's 300 feet long, we don't know what's wrong with it. You know, it weighs upwards of 20,000 pounds. So we can't pull it out to take a look at it. So we have to hire these companies to come in and do that work for us. and the well has to go back to their facilities, gets machined, rebalanced, all this stuff. So if I could get some unit pricing from some of these other companies, so then when I got a quote back from Peerless or Northern or whoever it was, that I then have a cross-reference to look at some of these costs and see, if they're in the ballpark.
That makes me a great deal more comfortable. Otherwise, being an entrepreneur, they already know what the price is going to be. They could, yeah. Anyway, let's leave it at that.
All right. Time-wise, though, do we need to give Rick the authorization, or are you thinking we'll have enough time?
I would like to see a budget set and then give me the authorization, because this could fall up at the meeting. It could fall 2 days after the meeting. We don't know exactly when it's going to fall, and I would much rather have the ability to have a certain amount that we know that we can work within, and then if we have to, if it's something bigger than what we think, then if we have to go down that avenue, we can come back to the board and look at it.
Typically, I don't ever tell any of these companies what our well budget is. We did that in Waterford quite a bit, and lo and behold, they always came in $2 underneath the budget.
You think? Yeah.
And, so there is some sound reasoning there.
So you're looking for 17.3 plus 44.8?
I am looking for 13,300 to do the cleanings and hold the well, plus whatever, like I say, Northern quoted what they felt was worst case scenario. Their pricing on the cleanings was far more expensive than Peerless's. So I don't know that any of these other prices are going to be less expensive than Peerless's unit prices.
Okay, so what would you like us to authorize the supervisor to approve?
I'd like the supervisor to be able to approve up to Northern's worst case scenario quote for the repair of well 1 and Peerless's far less expensive well cleaning quotes for Village Acres well 2 and 3, or 1 and 3. Twin Lakes 1, well 1, and Village Acres well 3. For a total of 44,000 up to 44,837.
I'll put that in the form of a motion. Did you get that detail in?
Yeah, sorry about that.
So 13,300 for cleaning and pulling, and then up to, I'll make it up to 45,000 that we would leave up to the supervisor to authorize for repairs.
Repair.
Can I just ask a clarification question? Aaron, the documentation you provided says 17,300. I just want to make sure you're sure it's 13,000.
Because that includes pulling the well, so I agree with, it should be 17.3 plus
17.3.
the difference.
I included the 4,000 back into the $31,531.
Yeah.
The Northern quote. So, yeah, the total is still correct. I just took the 4,000 for the pulling and inspection of the well out of that quote so that we weren't paying that twice.
Minus 4,000.
Do I need to amend my motion?
No, I think the totals are still correct.
And then up to 45 is gonna.
No, that doesn't cover the pulling of the well, though. I don't think.
Well, it does, because that was still quoted in Northern's quote for 31,000.
Oh, I see. All right.
It's getting a little muddy on this kind of stuff, and it kind of highlights the problem with trying to get a board approval for something we don't know what the cost is going to be.
Exactly.
There's
Right.
extreme expense to have a well pulled. They're going to have to bring a crane in to get that well out of there. And then it has to go back to their shop, and they have to do a significant amount of work to it before they can really find out what all the problems with it are. On top of that, that's going to also include cleaning that will have to be completed. And so to do these quotes this way, it makes it very difficult. And what Waterford did in the past was they would go and request bids for unit pricing, select a well contractor, kind of the way we do with our sewer grinder pump installer. You know, you've got a 5-year contract or 10-year contract or whatever it may be with a company that, you know, we've had a apples to apples comparison of unit pricing for certain types of jobs. The problem with Northern's quote is that they quoted proprietary cleaning methods that aren't industry standard, common, well-established cleaning methods. They may in fact be better, but I don't know that. I do know that the way everybody has cleaned wells for many, many years works pretty darn well, and it's a lot less expensive.
Yeah, my concern is that we're circumventing the bidding process by doing this. We're giving one owner or one company, by playing the prices right, they bid low, we give it to them, and they can have the same thing that the next bidder or more. Because you get into it and say, oh, gee whiz, now we got to give them more because it costs more. So I'm not really in favor of this motion, but be that as it may.
That could happen.
Yeah.
How does, if you don't mind me asking, how does Wolverine Lake do their?
They do what your second option was. We have a contractor who bids for the service, and we call them. So that's correct. So in my preference, I would prefer this to be rebid with Northern being held to the same things. Clean these 2 wells and pull, and then give us a price after it's taken out, so we compare apples with apples.
Well, we could do that. We're not locked into any timeline. These are both Village Acres wells, so you know our plan to do the rehab at Hillview may be adjusted. My biggest concern is that we have Hillview and Village Acres online when we get to irrigation demand in the summertime.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe Lane and Brown might be opened up if we did that, but I yield to my colleagues. So.
Okay, so what do you want to do there?
There's a motion.
Well, I've got
There's
a motion on the table.
Okay. Aaron, are you comfortable with making a decision process of this?
I am comfortable. Like I said, we're going to start working on getting unit pricing and selecting the well contractor in the future. This way of doing it is not the best way.
Right.
Okay. Would you be comfortable waiting and a little bit and maybe pursuing it from a different avenue? You don't have a problem with that, no? There's no urgency.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Reliability could be an issue if, you know, well 1 isn't operational. If we have a problem with well 3 of Village Acres, we'll lose that plan. That's the main motive.
I understand, yeah.
Well, why don't we authorize the 2 that we know the price of that's lower, and then work towards the contractor bidding process instead.
Just the
last one.
13.3?
Just the 13.3.
So that would keep things moving along.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to only include the 13.3 to Peerless to pull.
And I'll
Between Twin Lakes 1 and the
3.
Village Acres well.
Right, and I'll support that, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay.
Just for the cleaning, right?
Okay. So we have motion, we have support.
13.3 to pull and clean, correct?
Yes.
One of the quotes is not to pull, it's just to clean in place, just.
Do you have sufficient funds to pull and clean?
I do.
No, I mean, in this, for what we're doing for you right now, is it gonna, the 13.3?
We have budgeted.
Okay. So we have motion, we have support, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Thanks, Aaron.
So Roman and Howell?
Yes.
Chief, we got police department fleet vehicle purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll try to make this brief. Try not to make that thing spark up. This is the process. If you could please look at the memo dating September 12th, 2017. In that memorandum to you, Mr. Supervisor, I'm requesting 2 utility police interceptors and 1 which will be the new Dare vehicle, Super Crew F-150. We went through the bidding process, and Gorno Ford showed the lowest price at $27,300 each for the SUVs, and Gorno showed the lowest price for the F-150 at $30,923. I also want to move on to outfitting those vehicles. We placed bids out, and we received 3 bids. One of the vehicles that's going to be replaced is a sedan, which is going to be transformed into a new SUV. That bid was put out to AWT, 911, Oakland County, and RAS Engineering. AWT came in with the lowest bid at $10,317.40. The other 2 bids were a good $3,000 over that. The changeover vehicle from SUV to SUV, the bids came in, and AWT 911 again came in at the lowest bid at $8,473.75, with Oakland County coming in a couple $1,000s higher. RAS failed to submit the proper bid, and upon calling them, they again failed to submit the proper paperwork. The Dare vehicle, the F-150, the Super Crew, put out the bids. AWT came in at $39,3466, and Oakland County came in at $60,8819. And again, RAS failed to submit a proper bid.
Mr. Supervisor, Chief, if you could help me out, I apologize for this.
Yes.
I've kind of compared the September 11th letter that we reviewed in our packet and the one that you submitted tonight to us, and they read verbatim, and none of the information that you have just stated appear to be on our September 12th letter.
That's gonna be my question too.
For some reason, we did not get the information that all they did is change the date on the top of the letter. Everything else is the same.
The difference is that the Gorno Ford is on the previous one.
$30.
Correct. So what happened was Gorno Ford submitted one, and then I think they realized that they were getting underbid by signature, and then resubmitted another. So the deadline date that we gave them was for the board meeting, and today is the board meeting. They submitted it, and that's what they came up with. So I'm giving you guys the lowest bid that we received at this time.
Wow. I see.
That's the only difference in that letter.
That is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just don't have the numbers that you or the other numbers you were talking about. I don't have a sheet that reflects those additional numbers.
Right, we don't. And then the question was this done in a closed bid, sealed envelopes or something?
It is not.
How does one, so the last person to submit will always be the low bidder? And that doesn't seem proper.
No, I don't know why they resubmitted, quite honestly.
Well, that's because they knew what somebody else did, and they put it in for $30 less.
What they do is they compare, and all of the state of Michigan, all the police departments submit these requests. And I think they realized that they were getting beat by other police departments, because the 2018 vehicles just started coming in September, August, September. So they all came in, and I think they reassessed the situation, decided they were going to submit a lower bid because they were getting beat on the other bids throughout the state. I'm assuming that's why that came in.
My suggestion in the future is maybe have a closing date before the meeting, and so that this can be cut off, where somebody can't sneak in a lower price just before the meeting.
It would be probably a little more effective. But
I truly don't think they were sneaking in.
Okay.
I think they reassessed the situation and said, we are getting beat, so we're going to send out the bids that are still open, because I did say the meeting was last week.
Yeah, so if we had stuck to our original date,
nope, I'm sorry.
Signature Ford would have been low bid, right?
That is incorrect. The meeting was last week. This is still September 12th.
Oh, so we got this, okay, even though we got it tonight, it was actually 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks, Chief, for the explanation. Okay, looking for a motion? Or further questions?
So the total amount that I'm requesting is $108,248 and 81 cents.
Yeah. That's the cost of 3 vehicles and the upfitting.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that'll be a line item budget.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Roman.
Motion to approve $108,248.81 for 2 utility police interceptors and a DARE SSB Super Crew F-150.
That motion, looking for support?
Support.
That motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief, other chief. Okay, Fire Department Administrative Vehicle Purchase.
Thank you. Since the meeting was moved, there was some activity with some more pricing, and so that's what I brought in tonight. What the fire department was doing was pairing up with the police bid with Gorno Ford and attempting to get a low price on 2 fire interceptor vehicles. And so what occurred really within the last week is that Signature Ford had submitted another bid and Gorno also. And between the two, Gorno came up with the lowest bid at $62,350 for both vehicles. Signature came out to $62,774. And what you see, what I brought tonight was the low bid from Gorno Ford, which included each utility interceptor at $27,150 plus a light package, which was $4,025. So you add the $27,150 with the light package, $4,025, and you get the total vehicle price of $31,175 times 2, because we're requesting 2 vehicles for a total of $62,350. And the reason for the request is I'm going to take my vehicle and move it toward use by the department. It has 60,000 miles. It's a good time to move it over. We'll get several more years of life out of it. And our fire marshal, he's been operating with a 90,000 plus mile former police vehicle that is really not suitable for him. He carries a lot of tools, investigative equipment. He needs to add a ladder and a few other things in there. The car is just really overrun, and so I'd like to get him into one of the utility vehicles, and he'll be able to carry everything he needs. So that's the reason for request, and I apologize for the last minute submittal, but it is saving us some money, and I do appreciate some of the work that the clerk had done with this process to assure that we were getting a low price. And if you look on the the Gorno bid is part of the state of Michigan. It's gone through the state of Michigan bid process in order to present these prices. And if the fire department were just going to try to negotiate the 2 vehicles on our own, we may get a different price, because this was based on the premise of joining the police department with their vehicle purchase and joining together.
Okay. Chief, I got a question for you. On the cost of the vehicle, I look at your upfit from the Grono. They have an upfit for $4,415, and who's their upfitter?
I did speak with the outfitter, and I gave him all the details. I don't recall the name right now. If you look on one of the earlier submittals by Signature, the council was an additional cost of $340, and we need that. So
the new Gorno bid has the council built in there for the $4,025.
$340 for cup holders?
Well, it's a council that, you know, houses switches.
All right.
Yeah.
So, you know, somehow I'm just not buying into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you got a $600 difference in the outfitters. You got a 38.47 and 44.15, and at 44.15, I don't see the cup holders. Okay.
Well, here's what I could offer the board. You know, you make the final decision. Is the outfitters are the ones that, you know, there are some games played with those prices, and I think that you know, if this board just wants to authorize the low price on the vehicles, I'm happy to go back and, you know, get a host of other companies to try to weigh in on this and get a lower price on outfitting the vehicle with the lights. You know, one of our vehicles, we're not, the vehicle I'm giving up, my vehicle has lights, so we're not, you know, that's just going to go for fleet use. But you know, if you determine that you want me to take a harder look at the cost of the emergency lighting and the outfitting and the council issue and all that, I'm happy to do that.
I think you should. I mean, there's $600 there. That represents $1,200 between two vehicles.
Well, what I'd be happy to do if the board would just consider the two vehicles, those could be, you know, we could order those and those could move along, and then I would bring back another submittal on that.
Mid-Michigan is a very competitive company. I think they're in Bath Township or Lansing or somewhere over.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they? Yeah, somewhere in that neck of the woods. And I know they do a lot of work for a lot of different municipalities. So.
Well, I would gladly entertain the low price of $27,150 on each of the vehicles.
Okay. Any board members have questions or comments?
I think that's certainly legitimate. Getting the vehicles ordered, because there's a time frame there, and it gives him an opportunity to bid out the trimming.
Yeah, that's I mean, there is a difference there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though it's a $340 Tim Horton cup holder. So, okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve the purchase.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to authorize the fire department to purchase the two vehicles at $27,150 each, and request that he go out for additional costs for the outfitting.
Have a motion and support?
I'll support again.
I have a motion, I have support. Motion by Mike, support by Andrea. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. The next item we have item 11E is the first reading of our minor in possession ordinance. Minor in possession of alcoholic liquors. The state made a change on very short notice to us in the law. Counselor, care to elaborate?
Sure. The legislature adopted amendments to the minor in possession law that changed a first offense minor in possession from a misdemeanor to a civil infraction. Changed a lot of the other penalties as well, but that was the most drastic change to the law. The law, when it was adopted earlier this year, made it effective January of 2018, but then a recent amendment to that amendment changed the effective date to October 20th, which made us have to put this on the agenda sooner. This is just a first reading. It will be consistent with state law, and I will be working with the police department in modifying some of the procedures to accommodate this change.
In a nutshell, what's the change in the law?
Well, the biggest change is changing a first offense from a misdemeanor, which is a criminal offense, to a civil infraction, which is a fine.
Okay.
That being said, is the fine up to White Lake Township, and have we included that in our
Fee ordinance?
No, it's not up to.
It's a state.
State
So
civil
it's set by the
infractions
state.
are
Civil
set, we
infraction.
can't affect.
Okay.
Not more than $100.
Not more than 100. Can't tack on an administrative fee?
No. Okay, and I know the time is the essence of this, so we can keep it moving along. Any questions by other board members? No? Okay.
Do we have to hold a public hearing for this?
No.
No, we just do 2 readings when we adopt ordinances. This is the first reading, so it'll be back in front of you at your next meeting for adoption.
Need approval to move this to second reading?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve item 11E for second reading.
Support. Have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on. Item 12, old business. White Lake Presbyterian Church requests to finalize and close ordinance 88 mining permit and bonding requirements. My understanding after having conversations with Mr. O'Neill and the planning department, unfortunately, the timing of the meetings, he was unfortunately not able to anyone from the planning department was able to make it tonight because they're at a planning seminar. But my understanding is that they have met the requirements and criteria, Terry, as you understand it?
As far as I know, they've complied with everything.
Yeah, they've complied with everything. So we can close this out and get this off the books. Be done with it. Okay. Mr. Lilly.
I'll make a motion for the request to finalize and close the ordinance 88 mining permit and authorization to release the bond.
I have a motion. Looking for support?
Support.
I have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Question in the audience.
Yes.
Me a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What
Go
type
ahead.
of mining is it?
Well, mining is kind of a misnomer. They're not actually mining. There was some gravel extraction, and it just falls under a block title of mining.
I don't know if it's like oil and gas.
No.
There was a big hill and they made it flat.
Yeah. And it took them how long?
Oh, 10 years, 12 years? Yeah.
Glacial speed.
Yeah.
And this is finally,
Look at this, like if you want, that's what it's
yeah, it's finally behind us, so which is good. Okay. Item,
Yeah.
status of Civic Center consulting project. Well, unfortunately, again, neither of the planners are able to be here tonight because of the timing of the meeting, the rescheduling the meeting. But the process is still ongoing. They're still gathering data. My understanding is that the survey is still open. And they're trying to get more information from all the individuals out there that want to participate in that. I'm sure Sean will have an update for us. There's going to be another meeting on the October
18.
Thank you. And that will be involved in more of what's going on and kind of catching up to speed. I'm going to have some conversation with Sean regarding this and kind of find out where we're at. And my thought process was at some point will be a little more interaction between the public and this company, and I will make sure that I have a clear and concise understanding of exactly what it is that they're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like that same
I'll
thing.
find that out. So, okay, that's all I can add right now on that. Yes.
I would like to just add a couple things on that real quick. This, just for everybody again, the survey is going to be open until the consulting process is over, and the turnout is until the 18th, excuse me. The turnout's really low. It was only 231, and then it was up to like 300 as of yesterday-ish. So we really...
It's very disappointing.
We really need the input of the community.
Yeah.
I would like to have that added onto our marquee to...
Yeah, I think we will, once we get rid of the House Has, which will be oh, by the way, that's also Saturday. We'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we need to get it out there a little bit more.
Just a quick, have you taken
Yep.
your survey,
Yep.
direct them to the link.
Yep.
We should be using our own marquee for that.
Yes, we should.
And then the last thing on it is, I would very much like a good old-fashioned town hall.
Yeah.
The residents still have questions, they need clarity. We need to be able to interact more and people need to still be heard on this. So I'd very much like, and I don't know if that requires a motion to set up or how you want to handle that, but I'd really like to plan
We'll
a
have to
town
see what's
hall.
time and everything that's available, and it could be just set up as a meeting. I don't think it necessarily takes any board action other than we'll have to find a date that we have a venue
Right.
that we can do it and make it work.
Mr. Supervisor, it'd be great if that could be piggybacked to either the 18th or the last meeting or something to it. So we already have the venue
True.
there. So,
We'll have to look into it and see what can or can't be
because
done.
otherwise we can't hold it at the Township Hall.
Well, we know that.
Yeah,
That's why we need a new hall.
that's right.
I made that very clear. It was the first thing that came out of my mouth.
That's
that
exactly
night.
right.
On top of conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Can I say a comment about that? I would highly recommend that because I think that all of you spoke tonight so well, you know, and I think both sides need to be heard. And I think the library, there's so much more clarity coming, you know, and an opportunity to say that you're working together. I think people need to hear that and maybe need to understand that. And
I think they got a pretty good idea tonight.
yeah, but I think it's such a good opportunity to, when people talk and feel like they're heard both ways, you know, they're all good people here, and I said that earlier. And I think that this will tone some things down that maybe, we're getting too out of hand maybe, or I don't know what the proper word to use. But I really, really think that it's healthy, and it's that good old fashioned town hall meeting. People miss that, you know? I couldn't support that more. I just think it would be really good for everyone.
I think we should invite the library board to participate in that as well, so it's both boards available to answer
a joint
questions.
meeting, like I said, when I found out I was the first supervisor to ever hold a joint meeting between the two boards, I was kind of dumbfounded.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys sat on the board before. Why did that happen? Why did anybody?
I can't explain that. And why didn't it happen before and before and before and before?
Yeah.
Keep going back 4 years at a block. Okay, we'll move forward. We'll make some other things happen. Okay, going on to item 14. Historical Society 1948 fire truck. You driving that truck without license?
No, it's got a plate on it.
Oh, it's got a plate on it? Okay.
Yeah, it does have a plate on it.
Insurance?
1970s plate, but
Okay.
Mr. Lilly asked for a letter from the White Lake Historical Society to let the board know exactly what the fire truck is being used for. Mr. Lilly?
I asked Greg to formulate a letter to the Township Board. I know the question arose a month or so ago about the activity of the use of the truck and whether there was insurance on it. We did put that on our blanket policy, and I wanted the board to know and be able to make that opinion that I feel that that truck is still in good hands with the Historical Society in White Lake Township, and for us to cover that on our blanket policy was not an unreasonable request. But rather than making that decision, I asked Greg if he would just formulate something and allow the board the opportunity to make that decision. But it is being insured as of probably a month and a half ago.
Right. Well, I do know it is a township asset, okay, and it does participate in community events. And as long as we don't have some young kid come along and try to start it and drive it across the yard, Andrea.
That was a tractor.
I know. So at one of the events, it could have been rather interesting. Thanks to Bob for coming to the rescue.
Yes, absolutely.
So nonetheless, I don't think it's an unreasonable request because it is part of our history and we are what we came from our past, and that's what's shaping us into our future. It is probably it can't be a whole lot of money.
It was $500 and some on the blanket policy.
The Historical Society would not in 1,000 years be able to insure that truck that cheap on its own.
Yep.
So it makes good sense to put it in our blanket policy. And it is an asset of the township.
Township property, yes.
It is township property.
And it's a cool vehicle too.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So
Historical Society, once we took possession of the fire truck from the fire department, Historical Society. We reconditioned that fire truck. We
Right.
put in well over $8,000 to recondition that fire truck. So it was parade ready. And we've been at the Milford Parade for a number of years, the Highland Parade, Clarkson Parade, and it's a good showing that White Lake is supporting our neighboring communities.
Right.
So I thank you very much
For the record, I'd just like to make a motion to acknowledge and accept the fact that because of the joint use of the Historical and Township Board, acknowledge for the record that we will, now and in the future, pay for the insurance.
It'll be inclusive in our
on
fleet
48.
policy. Yeah. Inclusive in our fleet policy. You want to just?
Is that a motion?
Yes, in the form of a motion.
I'll support that.
Okay, we have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Did you get all that?
I did.
Mr. Ruggles? Okay.
Thank you, board members.
Okay.
You bet.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
At this point in time, we are going to go into executive session. We're going to go into executive session, approval to recess into closed session to consider attorney-client privileges communication in accordance with MCL 15.268H.
I'll support that.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Rick Cole?
Yes.
Terry Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Supervisor, since we don't have a new township hall with one of the various meeting rooms that I talked about earlier, is there a separate room in this building that can be secured so that we don't have to wait for everybody
Nope,
to
we
leave
can go in
here?
the kitchen real
We can go in
quick.
the kitchen, it'll be
Okay,
quick.
good.
We'll all kind of hover around the island.
I can do that. Is there any food?
To the kitchen.
In the kitchen. There's only 6 meters.
Are we going to the counter?
Really?
On plan?